Okay. Um, I'm so hungry. It's not even funny. I'm on a diet, and so yeah, I'm always hungry as it is, but when I'm dieting, I'm like twice as hungry as I normally am, which, if you were in class, I would be the grumpiest fucking person ever. Anyway, setting aside my hunger, I am gonna cover Learning Objective 1, or C1, from Chapter 5. And in this particular video, I am going to describe different types of cost behavior in relation to production and sales volume. And really, I think what we're saying here is there are three specific types of costs and their behavior. And depending on how much we produce, some costs are going to increase and some costs actually are not going to increase. And some costs will have a kind of a mix of the two. All right. So if I go to my chalkboard and I draw my awesome pictures, okay, the first type of cost that I'm going to want to talk about is what I refer to as a variable cost, okay? And a variable cost is a cost that is going to increase based on the volume of production. And a perfect example of a variable cost would be um, it would be direct material. Okay, if I'm making tables and I have wood as like the primary piece of material that I would use to make my table, the more tables that I make, the more expensive the cost of material is going to be. Okay, so if I don't make any tables, I'm going to basically start off with zero costs. And if I think of the y-axis as being cost and the x-axis as being volume, the number of tables that I make, the more tables that I make, the more it's going to cost me. Okay? And so I could treat this as a variable cost. And I don't know if we want to get into specifics just yet, but say that it costs me $25 for every table that I make, right? So again, I cannot stop saying right, but if I were to produce no tables, no cost. If I were to produce just one table, the cost would be $25. If I were to produce two tables, the cost is going to be 50. The per unit cost does not change. The variable cost is $25 in wood for every table. However, the more tables that I make, the more my total variable costs are going to go up. So if I produce 100 tables and every table is going to cost me $25 in material, then my material costs are going to be 2,500. Hopefully that's how you do the math. But that would be $25 times every particular table for 100 tables. 100 times 25. Hopefully I got the math right. I'm not even going to check it. But those are variable costs. Alternatively, we have things that we would refer to as fixed costs. Now, fixed costs, they're not going to go up based on the number of tables that I make. I could make 0 tables or I could make 100 tables, and the cost is going to remain the same, right? So again, if I have this as being cost and this as being volume of production, I could say that my fixed costs are going to be 3,000 every period, regardless of how much I make. And a perfect example of a fixed cost could be it could be rent on the facility that I'm making my tables. If I'm, man, I've caught myself so many times stopping before I say right. I think I'm very proud of myself. Even though I've messed up, I'm actually doing okay. I've prevented myself from saying right at least 5 times. But anyway, the rent on my facility, my landlord is going to tell me, hey, listen, you are going to pay $3,000 for this workspace or the right to reside in this workspace. It doesn't matter, Steve, if you produce no tables or 100 tables. Your rent is 3,000. It will not change based on the volume of tables that you produce. 3,000 is 3,000 in rent. That is a fixed cost. There's other types of examples of fixed. It could be utility as a fixed cost, right? But in general, there really isn't. I mean, there is. I mean, I guess the direct material would be considered a purely variable cost, but there are instances when costs kind of share the the elements of variability and the elements of fixed, right? So we one day I will stop saying that. Anyway, we will have a cost. Let's say I hire some kid to sit in my showroom, and this kid's job is to basically just stay in the showroom for the entire week and make sure when customers come in they're greeted and so forth. But I'm going to incentivize this kid. I'm going to say, hey, listen, I'll pay you $1,000 a week. Okay, I'll pay you $1,000 in cash a week. Doesn't matter how many tables we make or sell. I'm just going to pay you $1,000 every time you come to work for a week. And then if you sell a table, I will pay you an extra $5. So for every table that you sell, on top of the 1,000, I will also pay you $5, right? So every table that I sell, I'm going to incur more expense associated with this kid, right? So it's going to be 1,000 if I sell no tables, and then something above 1,000 if I were to sell 1,000 tables. If we were saying that I would pay him $5, a $5 bonus for every table he sold, and he sold 100 tables, then I'm thinking we're going to say that his total cost of employment is 1,500. It's the 1,000 base salary that he gets for showing up, and then $5 for every table times 100 tables. So $500 in variable cost and 1,000 in fixed. We refer to this as a mixed cost. It has both variable component to it and a fixed component to it. And no need to go through all of the PowerPoint slides, but this is a good slide. This is what we call step-wise. And what we're saying is something is generally fixed through a certain period or certain volume. So let's say that I have a workspace and the workspace is big enough or maybe let's back up. Let's say that I hire one employee to come in and make tables and I pay that employee $1,800 a week. And if we produce, sorry, I'm getting it mixed up. Let's say pay this employee $10,000 a period, right? So again, I can't believe I keep saying right. But let's say that I pay, um, let's see if I can get my pen to work. Let's say that I pay this employee, hey, all right, $10,000 a month to make tables for me. And what I'm saying is that I'm pretty sure that this one employee should be able to make 1,800 tables. Once my production increases from 1,800 to maybe 2,000, it's going to be too much for this one employee. And therefore, I'm going to have to hire a second employee. And I'm going to pay that second employee $10,000 a month as well. And therefore, I'm going to need two employees to produce 2,000 tables. And the total cost, therefore, is going to be 20,000. It is fixed within a relevant range. Once you exceed that relevant range, it becomes variable. And a lot of times that is what most costs look like. It's fixed or variable within a specific range, but then as our production substantially increases, the nature of our costs may change as well. Good slide. Glad I went to the slides. But I was looking for this as well. This is slide 10. And what we're saying is here are some good examples of fixed costs: rent, our property tax, our insurance, our office salaries. Depreciation, it could be fixed. There could be instances when it will be variable. Um, but our variable costs, right? Direct materials, direct labor, packaging, right? The more production, the more our packaging costs are going to go up. Shipping, the more we produce and sell and mail out, the more our shipping costs are going to be. And then mixed costs, we talked about the sales rep. Natural gas, that could be a mixed cost, right? We could pay utility of $300 a month, depending on how much gas we end up using. And then if we use more than our allotted gas, maybe we have to pay an incremental amount based on the actual usage. Our data, if we have cell phone plans and we're given a certain amount of data, if we exceed the use of our specific plan, maybe we could use more data during the month, but we would have to pay for every incremental bit of data that we use with the use of our cell phones. Okay. And then stepwise costs, again, that is fixed within a relevant range. We talked about shift workers, but it could be all sorts of different things, right? Our sales and our production could get so big that we would maybe need a second warehouse to store all of our finished goods or to house all of our production. Or maybe we increase our sales footprint from the West Coast out to the East Coast. Again, if I'm selling on the East Coast and I never sold on the East Coast, maybe I need more sales presence on the East Coast in addition to what I already have on the West Coast. But this is the fundamental aspect of what we're now going to learn in the next video.